Okay, we're going to see the first question type, which is the vocabulary question. So I do want you to copy the title of the vocabulary question, just put vocabulary question, vocabulary. And we're going to see what the question looks like. You don't have to copy this. So basically the question now just looks like which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase. So there's a blank in the text as of the passage, and you have to complete it, or you have to choose the word that completes it. So what do we do here? What is the strategy to follow here? I do want you to copy this. So what we do is we read the text carefully. We do want to read the text. Again, we don't want to try to understand everything, but we do want to try to understand the turns of the text. So what is it saying? In which direction is it going? We're going to spot the keywords. In this case, the keywords are going to be the transition words. So any word that implies that maybe I'm going to look for a contradiction, I'm going to look for an example, any transition words, those are going to be our keywords. Then we're going to predict a word or concept. This is a very important step that I want you to practice when you do exercises. You don't necessarily have to do this when you're doing the exam, but it's a very important thing that you do when you practice. So when you read the blank, you want to predict. Sometimes your prediction will be a word, like, okay, I'm looking for the word vein, I'm looking for the word mountain, whatever. But sometimes it's not going to be a word, it's going to be a concept, which means I'm looking for a word that means in a good mood, but not really. I mean, the prediction doesn't have to be as concrete as the specific word that you're going to see in the alternative. You just have to have an idea of what you're looking for. And that is good. And that's why I want you to practice. I want you to start practicing creating those concepts, those definitions, or those kind of general ideas of what we want. And then we land them down on the alternatives. Then we go to the alternatives, then we eliminate the wrong choices. Here you kind of use process of elimination, but not really, because the words, there's just one word, so the words are really right or wrong. And then another thing that you can do, and these steps are important because by this time you may already have the answer, you're going to plug in the alternative. So let's say you eliminate two alternatives and you have two left, and what you're going to do is you're going to plug them in the blanks to see if they work or not, and finally you're going to pick your final answer. Now, things you don't want to do, do not choose the first word that just sounds correct. Does this have exceptions? Yes. If you have a very broad, like a very vocabulary, then yes, probably the words that you choose that are correct are going to be correct. So you're going to start kind of checking on this while you do your practice test. So if you're doing your practice test and you already have a wide vocabulary, you can just choose whatever sounds correct. Or if you notice that whatever sounds correct to you turns out to be the right answer, go ahead, be my guest, right? But for most of us mortals, this is not the case. For most of us, which sometimes we don't know the words and they just sound kind of correct because we like how they sound or we heard them somewhere, so we may be wrong. It's also important that you avoid confirmation bias, which means just because you got it right by what it sounded right, and you remember that you got it right, but you don't really have a register of how many times you got it right, okay, then you're going to have a confirmation bias. So what my advice is to always keep track of your exercises, your practice, and see how many times you got it right out of how many. So maybe you chose the answer that sounded right and you got it right three times, and you say, yeah, I got it right three times. Yes, but how many times did you get it wrong? Maybe there are six times in which you also chose the one that sound correct and it was wrong. So now it's not just 3 out of 3, now it's 3 out of 9, which is not a good score. Finally, no, not finally. Secondly, if English is not your native language, do not dismiss your native language, especially if you have a Romance language like Spanish, French, Italian. So a lot of words in English, especially kind of obscure words in English, come from Latin. So if you have a Romance language, your language comes from Latin, which means it's very likely that the obscure word in English, like the high vocabulary word in English, is actually a common word in your language. So do not dismiss your native language. And unlike what most language teachers tell you, if the word sounds similar to a word in your language, it probably either is the same word or at least has the same origin, which means it has a similar meaning. So use your native language. And if English is your native language, but you know another language, also use that. Just use as many languages as you have, because we basically, or those words basically have the same origin. Also, don't spend too much time. We're going to see how when you practice, it's okay that you spend time on your vocabulary practice. But remember, we don't want to stop to consider every single word, and we also don't want to linger on questions. And vocabulary questions are a type of question that should take 30 seconds or less. Now, when you practice, you can take 1 minute, 2 minutes. That's okay. But by the time you're actually performing in the exam, if you haven't gotten the answer by 30 seconds, you have to just you move on to the next question. And finally, don't give up. I know this sounds contradictory because I just told you not to spend too much time. I told you to move on, but I'm also telling you not to give up. Well, don't give up when you're practicing. You definitely want to understand, analyze, get the words that you want, especially when you're practicing. As I told you, you may even take 2 minutes in one single vocabulary question when you practice. But by the time you get to the exam, you move on. Okay, copy this, pause and copy. Now, this is a list of the common transition words. You don't have to copy this. You can copy if you want to. You can take a screenshot, print it, put it on your wall. But these are the common keywords that we're going to look for when we do vocabulary. Because basically, vocabulary questions are about kind of what is not the intention, but what is like the flow, or what is like what's going on with the information that they're giving us. Are they giving us a case and then an example? Are they giving us like two ideas that contradict? Are they giving us like a sequence of like a cause and a result? What is going on, right? And this is why common or that we want the common transition words. Okay, we're gonna do an example. This is an example taken from the digital SAT, from the PDF format of the digital SAT. I want you to pause this question right now, this video right now, and try this question. I want you to try this exercise. Write down your answer on your notebook, okay? And we're going to analyze it. So pause it right now, write down the answer, write down why you think the answer is the answer, and we are going to analyze it. Okay, so applying the strategy, we're going to analyze the text. So we have the text, right? Former astronaut Ellen Ochoa says that although she doesn't have a definite idea of when it might happen, she blank that humans will someday need to be able to live in other environments than those found on Earth. This conjecture informs her interest in future research missions to the moon. So what are we looking for? We're looking for transition words, although. So why are we focusing on the although? Because it means that there is going to be a contrast somewhere. So what is the contrast about? Well, it's not about her, because I mean that's what she says. So the although happens between this blue underline and this green underline portion. So although she gives idea one, she gives idea two, which means idea one and idea two, like blue and green, are going to have a contrast. So there's a contrast between she doesn't have a definite idea of when, comma, and that's the contrast. So she doesn't have a definite idea of when, and she, something that humans will someday need to be. Now, this is the part in which we predict. We're going to try to predict what we want here. So again, as I told you, you don't have to necessarily predict a word. You may predict a concept. So we have, okay, she doesn't have a definite idea of when it may happen. And she maybe thinks, or I'm going to say, she elaborates, or I'm going to say she is going to say that. Again, your prediction doesn't have to be a precise word. It can be more than one word. It can even be a full sentence. You just want to have a prediction of what you expect to see this. Okay, if you already have the prediction, and if you already know that your prediction is correct, that's good. We're still going to follow. We're going to analyze the alternatives. So we're going to start demands, right? So you say former, I'm going to put demand here. So demand means to ask for something from a source of either power or entitlement. So like, is she going to demand that humans will someday need to be able to live on Earth? Well, again, it's not wrong if you think about it. I mean, you can form a sentence saying she demands that, right? But nothing in the text gives us the idea that she's going to demand, because nowhere here they're going to contrast demand, which maybe although she doesn't have the rank, or although she doesn't command, or although she doesn't have a position of power, right? What they think we're contrasting with, she doesn't have a definite idea. So even though the word demand may be grammatically correct, but it's not contrasting with having a definite idea, so we're not going to let it pass. So speculate. Speculate means talking about something that may happen in the future, right? So here says she doesn't have a definite idea and she speculates. Okay, maybe, because maybe you don't have a definite idea, but you can talk about something that may happen in the future. We're going to let it pass. We're going to analyze the next one. Doubts. She doesn't have a definite idea and she doubts that humans will someday. Well, in this case, not having a definite idea is kind of doubting, right? Because you don't really have a definite idea. So there's not really a contrast. There's no contrast that is marked by the word although, because doubting is not having a definite idea. So we're gonna not going to let it pass. And we go to letter D, establishes. Now, she doesn't have a definite idea and she establishes. Well, not having a definite idea is contrasting with the word establishes, because establishing is having a definite idea of something, right? It's like saying that something is going to happen. Okay, so we're going to let it pass. And now we're between establish and speculate, right? Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to plug in those alternatives. We're going to plug in speculate and we're going to plug in establish. So, former astronaut Ellen Ochoa says that although she doesn't have a definite idea of when it might happen, she establishes that humans will someday need to be able to live in other environments than those found on Earth. But here's the thing. When we say establishes too strong a contrast with having a definite idea, which means even though although it's showing a contrast, it cannot show a direct contradiction or a complete contradiction. So it can be summer, or I can say although it's summer, it is raining, because it is possible that it rains in summer. But I cannot say although it's summer, it is winter, because it is not possible that it's summer and winter at the same time. So in this case, establishing is too strong a contradiction from definite idea, and this is why the answer is going to be speculate, because speculate is just to talk about the future without having a definite idea, which is shown by the keyword although. So the answer is letter B. Okay, so this is how we're going to do our vocabulary questions. How can we improve in vocabulary questions? Well, the best way to improve is just to have a wide vocabulary. As I said at the beginning, if you have a wide vocabulary, you're going to be fine. Now, if your vocabulary is lacking, what you're going to do is, if you have the time, meaning if your exam is in 3 months or you have all the time during the day, you don't have to study for 8 hours a day. So you study for 4 hours a day. And what do you do with the rest of your time? Well, you read a book. It doesn't have to be like an old ancient book like Moby Dick. You can read a comic book. I don't care. You read whatever it is. Okay. You can even read magazines. But the thing is, like, from whatever book you're reading, from whatever category of book you're reading, you're going to learn words. You can also just watch movies or watch a TV show or just whatever you do, or even just hear songs, but you're going to actively learn words. You're going to stop and consider. Now, how many words per day? Some people say, or you can find advice on the internet that says, okay, get your flashcards and learn these 50 words per day. No, you don't want to do that. You want to learn at a rate of 2 or 3 words per day, no more than that. More than that is useless for your brain. Your brain is not going to capture all the words. This new SAT, this digital SAT, also doesn't require that many words, so it's a waste of brain power to spend like your time learning 50 words or 10 words per day. Just if you get at a constant rate of 2 or 3 words per day, you will be fine. Now, let's say you don't have the time. I don't have the time. I'm in school. My exam is in 1 month. What do I do? Well, you're going to use the text from homework. You're going to use the text that you use with your digital SAT, and you're going to learn words from those. You're going to choose still 1 or 2 words per day in this case, because we're assuming you don't have the time, and you're going to just learn those words from the readings, from the text that you're already using. If English is not your native language, you also want to try to have your inner monologue in English. So we all have an inner monologue. Well, I recently read that not all of us, I'm just assuming all of us, but actually some people don't have an inner monologue. But if you do have an inner monologue, you're going to have it in English. You're going to have to try to explain your day, explain your complex thoughts, explain the conversation that you have with your best friend in English. and you pretend you must use English every day. Okay. Now, let's say you already have a good vocabulary in your native language, but you don't have that good vocabulary in English. Well, try to improve on that. Try to improve on, okay, how would I say this very complex thought with this very high vocabulary that I have in my native language? How will I translate that to English? Now, regardless of your time, you want to learn how to analyze a word. Okay, I'm gonna have a video. Well, I have a video, but in my YouTube channel about analyzing words. So everything you learn in school about prefixes and suffixes and roots, you can apply it here. Again, this is something that you want to do when you're practicing. You don't really want to analyze words, or you do, but you don't really want to spend too much time analyzing words in the real SAT. So you want to practice analyzing words every day. Words you may already know. Let's try to say, okay, what do they mean? Where do they come from? What words are similar to those words? What words do I know in other languages that are similar to this? And you want to learn by synonyms. You don't want to learn words and then write the definition of the word with a very long explanation. No, you want to learn a new word, just write two words that have the same meaning, and you move on with your life. Okay, you want to learn by synonym. You want to learn by associations. Okay, things you have to remember: the more words you know, the better. Okay, just in general, you're gonna have a better vocabulary question section if you know more words. You want to use your native language. You analyze the word. You want to not spend too much time, especially during the exam, and you don't want to choose a word just because you know the meaning. This is a very important thing. This is a mistake that some people make, which is sometimes you read four alternatives, right, and you kind of eliminated two of them, and then now you're between two words, but you know the meaning of one, you don't know the meaning of the other one, and you end up choosing the one that you know because you have no idea what the other means. But in most of the cases, you actually have to choose the one that you don't know the meaning, because if you know the meaning of a word, you can eliminate it, right? So it's either the answer or not the answer. And then if it's not the answer, you eliminate it. And then if you eliminated three of the alternatives but you don't know the meaning of the fourth, well, it doesn't matter because you already eliminated the other one. So that has to be the answer, even if you don't know the meaning. Okay, now the material we're going to use, as I said in the first video, well, in the overview video of the verbal section, we're going to use the Meltzer book. This is the digital or the SAT for the digital SAT book. The exercises in this book are on these pages. You can copy this and you can use the exercises. Again, if you don't have the time to do this, my advice is just take the digital practice test PDF format and just do the vocabulary exercises, and then you move on to the next question type that we're going to do when we see the next question type. Okay, see you in the next video.